think a creative pursuit like this is a key to a fulfilled life?
I'm much more fulfilled now than I've ever been in life, for sure. I mean, having wonderful kids and a wife and all that stuff is great, but professionally and just who I am, I'm much more fulfilled. Like, I feel like I found it.
Welcome to the Grateful Podcast with Jack Wagoner, where each and every week we explore what it takes to live a life full of purpose and gratitude. I'm your host, Jack Wagoner, and I am a deep believer in what I call the duality of gratitude and relentless action toward your goals. That's where we can feel grateful for what we have in this moment right now while pursuing something bigger and better in the future. And that's the way I like to live, and that is what we talk about here on the Grateful Podcast. The Grateful Podcast with Jack Wagoner presents. Subscribe. Welcome back to the Grateful Podcast. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Bunkt, also my father, a self-taught artist who's made the likes of that, which is just awesome. And today we're going to talk a lot about both the creative process and just life in general. So welcome to the podcast, Dad.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, how you doing today?
I'm doing excellent today. This is pretty fun.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't talk about my art a lot.
I know, I'm excited. It's gonna be cool.
How are you doing today?
You don't have the typical artist story, and that's reflected in your art itself. So I want you to kind of touch on how you got into art and how that is shown through your artwork itself.
Sure. All right. So, as a counselor for years and years, my education was in school counseling. I worked as a therapeutic counselor for years. And was not really exposed to art during much of that time. I didn't grow up in a family that went to museums or anything like that. So the idea of being an artist was pretty something that never crossed my mind. Probably around when when I started going down to Boston for weekends, I started noticing street art, which I don't know why, and graffiti, which I don't know why I'd really not noticed before. But it became a real powerful message to me that these really kind of simple, not beautiful works of art could convey such a powerful message, whether it be something about protest or peace or whatever. Suddenly it clicked in me that you don't have to be a great artist to make great art. I kind of equated it to a lot of the music I listened to maybe punk musicians who aren't trained in music necessarily. They pick it up on their own, but it has this raw energy about it that I was always attracted to. So, once I noticed that, and I felt like Krista, can I just say, when I met my wife now, who was also in the art world, Krista, she started exposing me to new things. Sadie, your sister, was young, and I wanted to be able to relate to her in a way that wasn't through sports, like my dad always did with his daughter, with my sister. So all those things sort of led me into this direction to try to start making art. My inspiration came from a really stressful job. I tried lots of things to deal with the pressure and the anxiety and the nervousness of being at work and the aggression that I saw. Nothing was really working. I was early on was able to kind of put a lot of those feelings onto paper. And then I just got addicted.
Yeah.
Like you've seen my studio, like there's just art and art and art and drawings, and it just became such a need for me. It was no longer an option. It just became something that I sort of like redefined myself. Was I 43 or 44 when I started doing this? And sort of discovered this brand new part of me that I had no idea was there, which is a pretty cool thing. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think.
Did I miss any parts of that?
Maybe a little bit more on how that part of your creativity is reflected in your art itself. Because
Yeah.
I mean, your art is unique. It
Yeah.
is uniquely you. I
Yeah.
think that one of your common opinions that you've really emphasized over and over again in my childhood is that you don't need, in order to be great at something, a lot of times the greatest people do it their own way. And
Yeah.
so your art in itself rejects the norm a little.
Yeah, I do that, and that's I kind of like. I've always liked that part. You know, when I teach myself instruments, I always kind of teach it my own way. I don't know if I'm just too stubborn to learn from somebody, or I just like to do it and see what happens. You know, I struggle to listen. I just kind of like to get my hands dirty and do it. So you know, a lot of my art. You know, a lot of it comes from stuff that's maybe already ripped up, or something that I see on the ground that's already there, like a shape that I see on the ground. Like, you know, like you look at that face or those eyes or something that I just saw on my studio floor, and they kind of spark me to create more. I don't feel like I'm answering your question yet. Like, myself is in this. It is in this because it is. I don't even know what it is. Like, it's just something that, just like me, it's something that's kind of raw and it's self-taught, and no one told me to do this. It's just something that sort of came out of my brain by maybe just seeing different things lying around on the floor and seeing green things and saying, oh, those could become reeds, and just sort of piecing all these little pieces together. Kind of making something whole out of maybe something that was a mess before.
Yeah.
I maybe wasn't a mess before, but I wasn't very happy in my job. And I kind of felt like I loved the idea of picking up things from the floor, things that have been discarded, things that have been sort of forgotten about, and kind of making those things into something maybe not beautiful, but really unique.
I think that's very powerful.
Yeah. And again, like, I had no idea that this thing, like, and now all I see when I go out on a walk, I love when the snow's down, because when it melts, you see little creatures and teeth, and it's just, you know, it's everywhere. It's just been life-changing.
I think you've said to me before that, like, you look at your life, there's two different big changers. You look at your life pre-kids, post-kids,
Yeah.
pre-art, post-art.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Like,
and maybe pre-dog, post-dog.
here she is. Yeah, my muse. Yeah, I mean, I definitely look at my life that way. You know, I'd been struggling to find like a thing, and for a while I thought I was playing music, but I figured, like, I always would top out with where my skill level could take me.
Right.
Discovering art was all of a sudden like, oh, it's endless. I mean, there are an endless amount of ideas and things that I can do and make, and it's just, that is so exciting to me.
The infinite possibilities.
The infinite possibilities that it, you know, you look at my stuff from now, like 6 years ago, and it's really fun to see kind of the process and the growth and all that stuff.
At the beginning of your art, you really emulated Basquiat.
Yeah.
And it's been really cool to see, as you've developed, how your style has transformed from really Basquiat-esque, like you can really see Basquiat in your work, to uniquely you.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? And do you think that you needed that, you needed to emulate something before you could become unique?
I think so. I think, you know, Basquiat resonated with me in such a powerful way. Like, the first artist that I saw that was really hit me in a way that I just hadn't been hit before. And he taught me many things about like not making mistakes. He would just kind of cover things up and redo them. And he taught me many things about like just being able to find your own style. So for a while, certainly he was my my vision of kind of, but like, you want to run away from that because nobody wants to be. I don't want to be compared to another artist.
Right,
I want to be.
yourself.
I want to be Bunkt.
Yeah.
I want people to say, "Hey, your stuff looks a lot like Bunkt." So but yeah, he was an inspiration, and when I went to France, to Paris, to the Louis Vuitton Museum to see a Basquiat show from his earliest works to his last work before he died.
Yeah.
I've not been the same since that. Just seeing his art close up and how he did things, just really taught me to be less afraid to make mistakes. Like, and just to go with it. And if something doesn't look right, you just cover it up or you make it something you want to. But the freedom to just make art without feeling like you're tied to rules, without feeling like you're tied to a certain style. You can just do what comes naturally.
Yeah.
And it's a thrill to kind of go into things so confidently and knowing that you can't make mistakes.
That's the confidence piece. I was about to say that, like, I'll talk to you about your sketchbook and what you're doing,
Yeah.
or a piece or a painting, and you're like, yeah, it's not great right now, but I'll figure it out. And you never, no matter how like offline it is from what you want it to become, you know that you're going to turn that mistake into a great final product.
Yeah, it was. It'd be a great way to live life, and I if I could live the rest of my life like I live as an artist, I think my life is pretty great. But I think I'd be even happier. The ability to be so confident in what I do, to be so resilient in something, to kind of keep at it day after day after day, and to really want something, to be really proud of it, to want to show it to people. It's been pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, like, you do that in your art. You are, I think about your artistic process for each and every painting, and you have that in your art as a whole, as a hobby as well. Everything you just said, that confidence that it will work out. Do you have that in your art career?
Oddly enough, yeah. Like I, even though it's been slower than, I think maybe naive when I first began about how, I think naively I thought it wouldn't be as hard to make like a bigger impression on the world.
Yeah.
It's not, but I don't mind that at all. I kind of have enjoyed the grind, and, I do feel like, well, I've seen progress every year since I've started.
Yeah.
Which leads me to believe that, there are going to be better, bigger things that come. But that not being the big goal, but it certainly would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you do kind of have that in your artistic aspect of life. You live it in that confident way.
Yeah. In my artistic life, I do.
And do you think that's why it is so addicting? The feeling you get from it?
Oh, for sure. That's one of the huge things. I mean, when I finish something that I love, like it's, and it comes together in like this story and everything's, she's so cute, and everything just comes out so perfectly. It is it's such a thrill. And, when I hang my stuff up in a restaurant and see people just eating with all my art up on the walls, or music playing, like a band and my stuff in the background, it's a complete thrill. Yeah, and proud,
I bet.
Yeah.
Do you take those moments to really feel the joy of it?
Probably not. I quickly, Krista gets on me because I very quickly kind of absorb something and then want to move on to what's next. I finish a painting, and you see this, like, not 2 minutes later, I'm starting something else. Like, I think one of the things I could do, I've been told by people, is just to kind of appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate what I've done, to be an artist in only doing this a couple years, and to have sold like I have, and to have it up in all these places, to not always need more, to be okay with kind of how it's going right now. And but you mix that with the drive for more. I don't know. It can be a little complicated to be satisfied right now, but also have this drive to want more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you just perfectly described like the basis of this podcast.
Oh, nice.
I call it the duality between gratitude and ambition, where you can be, the goal is to be satisfied with what you have right now while working towards a higher goal.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of the things that people say the most often that's actually in practice the least. I deal with the same thing. I mean, as my dad, you know that I'm always on to the next thing. I'm always pushing for more.
Yeah.
It's really hard to appreciate what you've accomplished when you are so driven. And you can always appreciate that thing intellectually, but it's hard to feel that physiologically.
Yeah, it really is. And I wonder if that's always going to be, no matter how far you get, if that's always going to be a feeling.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why a lot of people that are successful are still miserable.
Right.
You know, like the key is, I think, is being satisfied with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think that sometimes we can trick ourselves into thinking the result is what's going to bring us joy, when really what we derive the joy from is the process of it.
That's so true. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point.
So like, you might think, oh, I need to finish this painting, it'll make me feel good. But really what makes you feel good is solving the problem of how are you going to make this painting great. And that's why you so instantly jump into the next one, because you crave that feeling of problem solving.
For sure. Because you look at a blank canvas and you're like, oh God, how am I going to do this in the beginning? And then you just like piece by piece and this and it comes together, and it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel that with so many things.
You do?
Yeah. Especially rock climbing. I think it's like a puzzle in that way.
Yeah, they're different but the same.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out a puzzle to get a positive result. Yeah.
Do you think a creative pursuit like this is a key to a fulfilled life?
I'm much more fulfilled now than I've ever been in life, for sure. I mean, having wonderful kids and a wife and all that stuff is great, but professionally, just who I am, I'm much more fulfilled. Like, I feel like I found it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people search a long time to kind of find their thing. I mean, it took me years and years and years. So I think I hold it really precious. And I'm really like, because it was work to get to that point. You know, it was a rocky road. It was, you know, so I am able to take all those experiences from years and years. And I think that's why I can make so obsessively, because I've got all that stuff that's just been in me for years, and it's just all ready to come out.
Right.
You know, the timing was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me. I'm glad it happened when it did. I'm glad that I never went to art school. And there's nothing against art school, but you know who I am, the person that just kind of likes to say, I'm just going to do this my way and see what happens.
Yeah. You did do it very your way.
Yeah.
And I think if you tried to do it anybody else's way, you might not have the same fulfillment from it.
Right. And one of the things I get is feedback. A lot of the positive feedback I get is that my stuff's really authentic. And you know, that's something I always value in music, in people, in art, is something that to me feels like real.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how to describe that. I think it's a feeling that I get, you know, with, you know, it's people that seem to be doing it for the love of doing it. So yeah, I've always been drawn to that.
All right, so we're going to pivot a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the listeners are going to be really interested in your creative process and how you come up with your ideas, because as you've touched on, you create so much art. So much. How can you possibly come up with Like, how many sketches do you do per day?
I have a lot. It depends on the day, but I've always got kind of intricate sketches going and books going.
Yeah.
I mean, I just finished one of those big notebooks in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I started another one.
And you're working on your canvas and your big paintings.
It's in January. It's whatever. I've done 6 big paintings this month already as well.
It's incredible.
Yes.
And so you constantly have these ideas and this and just this creativity. Where do you think it comes from for you?
I have this thing where I can see. My studio, I don't know who I'm looking to sometimes.
You can look at me and then,
my studio floor is a disaster. And it's like that way for a reason. When I say disaster, it's like cut up old canvases that I don't like, things that I know I'm going to use someday, but haven't for a while. And so some of my paintings, they start off in different ways. Some of my paintings start off like that, where I'll see something on the floor and I'll say, well, that looks like the head of the frog one I did. That looks like a really weird head of a frog. So, I'll just put that down, and then things will start to come together after that.
Right.
Once I have that main idea, then things just come together. So a lot of times it's seeing a shape on the floor and picking that up. Another thing that I like to do is just start painting randomly with no real idea of what I'm doing, and I'll just start laying down paint until I see something.
Yeah.
Until I see an eye here or a tooth there, and a lot of times I can see my painting in this kind of this mess. If that makes sense. I'll just start making stuff until something comes to me.
And when that something comes, is it the next step or is it the full picture?
That's a good question. Usually just the next step. But once I get that next step in, full picture starts happening.
Does the full picture, is it, all right, this step and you kind of arrive to it through a series of doors? Or is there you get that first spark, and then all of a sudden you're like, all right, I have an idea?
Sometimes. Okay. The really exciting ones, there's some that you can do in a day just because everything goes well. But then there's some that are a real challenge, where you see something first and you think it's going to be great, and then you're just blank for a while. And nothing comes to you. So I just set those aside because, like we talked about, I know that there's going to come a day when that's going to be something that I use and is useful for me.
Right.
Another way I make art, another way I create is I do just get weird. I use things from my life. You'll see a lot of right now, because my mouth is so messed up from going to the dentist so much, you'll see a lot of weird teeth things. From my life, you'll see a lot of weird dog creatures and cat creatures, because Nellie is around me 24/7.
And we saw, the cats are always looming,
always
that weirdo
that, just watching, seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
I still draw on some of my stress and anxiety from when I was working as a counselor. So I draw from life history, from experience. I draw from maybe a book that I'm listening to every once in a while. But mostly it just comes, I just get things in my head.
Yeah.
Not quite sure where they all come from.
They just appear. And
once I start drawing something, I mostly go into drawings not knowing what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
And then I just allow it to kind of happen.
I think that's really cool.
It is really fun, yeah.
I know, for me, when I want to write something, I sometimes don't know what I want the full thing to be before I start.
Right.
But I need to, craft an introduction or the first sentence, and then it flows. Kind of we were saying with your, you open one door, then the next.
And then little pieces start falling together.
Right. I think a lot of times, especially in, a public school system, there's pressure to have the idea ready and then build it from there. Like have the end result be at nothing and work towards that end result instead of allowing for your creative process to flow where you can pivot and make adjustments.
Yeah, make mistakes. And I mean, I have tried in the past to like have a set idea from what I want something to look like.
Yeah.
And they usually are either kind of boring because it's kind of formulaic where I know, and they're more boring than my other ones, and they're less, I don't know, they're missing something, and they never turn out like I want them to in the end.
Yeah.
Anyways, so like ideas beforehand usually don't work for me.
Yeah.
No matter how bad, I kind of try. Creative process, I like to have a couple going at the same time a lot of times, like a drawing here, and sometimes my drawings will lead to ideas for bigger things. I need to go to more museums, and I often get ideas from there. I don't know what I'm missing about my creative process.
If you're enjoying this episode of the Grateful Podcast, I would very much appreciate it if you could either share this podcast episode with friends and family, or kindly leave a review down below on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. It would help me be able to make this podcast better for you, better for all my other listeners. Thank you. Enjoy the show. Do you think that you walk Nelly a lot? And there's a lot of recent science that's come out about, or it's not even that recent, but just how your brain is activated through movement, like walks and long, periods of just not too intense movement. Do you think that your walks are some of the moments where you find those ideas pop in your head?
Oh, for sure. You forget about, I need to walk more without headphones is one. Like when I go walking in the woods with her, like a Vaughan Woods or something, like it's a really valuable time. So I've been trying to do that more, but the walks are like, you see things, you're freer in your head, as long as I'm not yelling at cars going by too fast. It's possible. The walks are something that sort of wake me up, unless it's really hot outside. But like on these cold days, I maybe dread going out, but once I do, it is a spark, and it leads me into can get me out of a rut sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's those times alone where you can really concentrate on what your own ideas are.
Yeah.
You're an introvert, like an extreme introvert who needs his time alone.
Needs it.
I think one thing that our culture is really lacking is originality as a result of social media. Yeah. And a lot of people have all these ideas, but they're just ideas that have been accumulated through consumption of mass consumption of social media.
Right.
They don't even know if this idea is their own or where it came from.
Right.
Do you think that you use your alone time to come up with ideas that are original and creative?
Oh, for sure. When I don't get alone time, you've seen the you've seen the product of that. I get frazzled, and I get a little grumpy, and I sort of lose myself if this house is really crowded for a couple days, or I'm amongst too many people for a couple of days.
Right.
Like, you see me start getting like caged animal, and I'm not very creative in those moments. That's more like me trying to get through and survive. So those alone moments are vital to just breathing and thinking and coming up with new ideas, or just listening to what's going on instead of having to focus on everything around me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love being around people, but I'm mostly my family.
Right, you need some time.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you just need your own time, because that's one of the things that helps you make things like that, and helps you just feel good.
Yeah, and I recognize the older I get, like, this is just who I am. There's no use in kind of fighting that. Like, this is who I am. I'm when I'm around people, I'm kind and I'm nice, but I need a lot of time for myself, which I think a lot of artists do, musicians, creative types. Yeah. Yeah.
We were having a conversation last week about the I'd call it a tragedy how a lot of the greatest artists are their art comes from pain. We are talking about Kurt
Yeah.
Vonnegut,
Yeah.
and I think of Robin Williams.
Yeah. Another one.
Why do you think, as an artist yourself, a lot of the greatest and most respected artists are ones that really just had a difficult relationship with life? That's a deep question.
Yeah, I think that that kind of being that vulnerable allows you to really see, and maybe having that sort of like, it allows you to see both the really, really beautiful things in the world, but it allows you, but like, with that comes a real sensitivity, I think. Being an artist, a lot of times, I mean, I'm a really sensitive person when it comes to like reading the news and watching people be hurt or people being treated unfairly. Like that stuff, I know it affects people, but a lot of people it can really affect. And I think a lot of people like they can see the beauty, but that harshness can be really, really difficult to take. That sort of brutality in the world. I also think a lot of people like Robin Williams, probably nobody's ready for fame.
Yeah.
And especially if you are maybe a quieter, more introverted person, and all of a sudden you're thrown into this crazy spotlight. I think that can lend some, I think that could be, that was Basquiat.
Right.
You know, Basquiat was, hit fame really, really fast. So went from, you know, part-time in his parents' house to cardboard boxes in Central Park to, you know, couches to really to ultimate fame, and couldn't handle it. So it's a huge question, but I do think not all creative types, but a lot of creative types, they also struggle with depression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sad.
It is sad. And you wish, I don't know. I don't know what I wish. You wish that they realize how much you, like Robin Williams meant so much to you guys.
Yeah.
Like he was a hero. Yeah, it's really sad. I just feel sad for him and his family that someone that brilliant maybe can't see it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about, so in Cat's Cradle,
Yes.
Kurt Vonnegut book, for those of you who haven't read it,
Go read it.
He has a lot of the three children of the doctor who created Ice Nine, which destroyed the world.
Yeah.
They all have different creative endeavors in which they, I think, try to understand the world. And so I think art is a means that people have to better understanding the world. And that's one of the main reasons that people practice art, to put their ideas out there in a way that makes sense to them.
Yeah.
And Rick Rubin has the idea that the audience should come last, because true art comes from within you. I want you to speak on that a little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're making, I mean, I think that's where authenticity comes in. Like, if you're worried about what's gonna sell, or what's gonna be popular, or what's gonna look good to somebody else, then you're doing it for somebody else. So the stuff that really shines, I think, is the stuff that comes from. It's why I love self-taught artists and like outsider artists, people that are making art for the sake of making art.
Yeah.
You know, not the ones that are like big galleries, because I think that's where the authenticity comes from. They're just doing it because it's a drive to do it and to create. I don't think there's dreams of fame or anything like that. What did I miss?
Nothing. I think you answered it really well.
Yeah.
My follow-up question is, when you create a painting, what are you thinking about in your intentions for it?
Man, everything.
Yeah.
I think about you and your sister. I think about what I want to do. I think about life. I think about the painting, maybe the idea behind the painting, and maybe I create a story. Like with this one, I had a whole story that was going through my head time and time again.
Yeah. A story that you made up?
A story I made up. This is called, I forget greed, gluttony, and guppies. So the idea of this was there's this guy just taking all the food out of the water, eating them all for himself, shoving his face full, like no consideration. He kind of has that dazed and confused look to him in my eyes, and just and here you've got this whatever you want to call him. And he sees all his food getting eaten. So, the obvious target that he's going to go after then is this guy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the story in my head. Like, this guy just doesn't even consider anything around him. He's just taken as much for himself, could give two craps about the animals around him or the people around him. He's just this kind of clueless glutton.
Yeah.
And I like to think that clueless gluttons get what's coming to them sometimes, as this guy will.
You hate clueless gluttons.
I do. I don't like inauthentic things. I don't like people that I don't like is harsh. I struggle with people that kind of don't think on a grander, like that only think about themselves and their needs and not what's around them. It's a struggle for me.
Yeah.
I want to drive really, really, really fast because I need to get there quick.
Yeah,
Don't get me started.
Yeah. You really don't appreciate when people don't think of their surroundings.
No,
and
it's a bother.
You struggle to understand it as well, because
I do.
I think one of your key values in life is thinking about other people and how your actions will affect them. And that's one that you really taught to me and Sadie as well.
Yeah. And I think there can be, I think I maybe take that to the extreme. I'm proud of you and Sadie because I don't think you have it. Like, I'll sit in a coffee shop and see and worry about people that are coming in that don't have a seat. As opposed to just kind of listening to what I'm doing and focusing on my work. I'll be like, oh my, where are they going to sit? Maybe those two are done, and I'll just, just ridiculous things like that. So,
yeah. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I let that out of the bag.
Yeah, I would probably just not think about it.
Yeah.
I think there's a time and a place where that, obsessive thinking of others' needs is really important, and some times where you just gotta...
It can get in the way.
Yeah, it gets in the way of stuff.
Because I know when I'm standing and there's nobody sitting there, I'm not waiting for someone to save me. I'm an adult, and I'm gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
But I do that with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a counselor for years. It's like empathetic.
It comes from that.
Sensitive, those things. Yeah.
I think it comes probably from geeky.
Oh, for sure. Sorry, Mom.
Yeah.
But
she's not ashamed of her people-pleasing mess, I think.
Right. No, I think we learn a lot of what we
get from our parents.
I'm always curious of how what you're going to pick up from me as you get older.
I think I've grown. I don't know. Maybe being in two separate households and having time away from you and Mom, especially my year last year, has allowed me to grow into a more independent person from my parents.
Yeah. Which is great.
Which I'm really.
That's what a parent. That's what a parent wants.
Right.
They want to. At least I wanted the better version of myself. I wanted to recognize the parts of my life where I struggled, maybe with confidence and things, and to advocate for myself and kind of recognize where my weaknesses were. Yeah. And try and push that on you and your sister, so maybe you wouldn't struggle with that stuff as much.
That's a really good goal, I think.
Yeah, I think more parents need to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me too.
yeah,
One thing I definitely wanted to add here is that, like, as a dad, seeing you go after something that makes you happy and lights you up
yeah,
has been one of the most influential experiences in my life. And I think that for young kids that are growing up and still have crazy neuroplasticity and are always
Yeah.
learning and taking things in, to see both of their parents really prioritize careers that fulfill them
yeah,
has been one of the most pivotal things in creating my future. I would never get into a job that didn't fulfill certain needs. I think that a lot of society, especially previously, talked about getting a job to fund your dream life.
right.
I think what you and mom have done is, and Krista
Yeah.
and Anthony, all my parental figures have a profession that adds value to their life rather than just funding a life that they'd want.
For sure. I feel so, I mean, not a lot of people get to do what I do. I think, yeah, I recognize what a privilege it is to do what I do. You know, I wish that someday I hope to make more money doing it.
Yeah.
I think that I'm in a position where I feel really grateful for being able to do this. I can't, you've seen what I'm like. You've seen the other side. I mean, I don't want to paint myself as like I was a monster, but when I was as a counselor, it was exhausting. And I was exhausted a lot. And it's nice to have more energy and to be less scared. Like you guys would slam doors and I'd be skittish and all that stuff. So, I'm glad that you've been able to witness me do this, because for a while I think it didn't, like what I was doing, I know was admirable, but it didn't look like I was very fulfilled, I imagine.
Yeah.
Just sort of surviving.
What would life be like if you didn't take that turn?
I don't know. I can't even imagine it.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would have found. I don't think I would have found art if things hadn't come together like they would have. Again, just really fortunate. Yeah. I don't know what it would have been. I had to get out of that field.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad we don't have to worry about that.
Me too.
Because when I don't make art for a couple of days, I can get a little grumpy. I just have this.
It's become a part of you.
Yeah, for sure. Something that it feels like it's no longer like a want.
Yeah.
But like a part, like you said, a part of me. It's kind of my diary, if you will.
Talk about that for a second.
Well, I can look back and I can tell you where I am when I was doing this, or what I was thinking, or where this story came from in my life. So, it's like, cool. I can look back at all my paintings and kind of remember where I was at. And that's pretty fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I just came up with that right here on your podcast.
I really like that.
Yeah. But it feels that way. And when you when I was at the library and I had like 40 paintings up, it felt like, here I am. Like this is me. This is my diary. This is my, you're looking at
like showing your emotions to the world in a visual form.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And people can interpret it. I mean, some people hate it. Some people think it's weird. Well, it is weird. Aggressive, angry, but funny, comical, but gnarly. Yeah.
But it's you.
Completely.
The last thing I want to touch on, I want to circle back to one of the things you said in your first answer.
Yeah.
Which was how you, this part of your life started when you were 43. You found yourself and everything came together at the perfect time, you said.
Yeah.
At 43 years old. And our culture pushes kids at my age to find that purpose and that meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a specific question for you on that, but I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
The older you get, the more you see different chapters in your life and why they were there and what you were doing and why you did what you did. I think I don't know. I think the idea of like just knowing what you want to do and doing that for the rest of your life. Maybe there's some people that do that. It seems a little boring to me. Like I think the experience of going out and trying new things and failing and how many jobs have I had in my life, but exploring the country like I was able to do and see things and maybe try on a bunch of different hats and I love those experiences. Live in different cities. I mean, the idea of no, not your question, but the idea of just like only living in one place for the rest of my life is difficult for me to comprehend.
Yeah, you take your identity as a sum of all your experiences, and so to have like a
for sure
interesting identity, you got to choose and take parts of different places.
Yeah, and you got to take some. You got to have. I mean, nobody's story is going to be smooth. You got to have some rocks in that road, and you got to have some hard times. I think that's what builds character, makes people interesting.
Yeah.
Lucky to the person who at 17 knows what their life is going to be and does that for the rest of their life. But to me, I don't know. It was just I never knew, and I've been struggling to figure it out. But when I look back on it, it seems like. A great story. Not one that's done yet, but I expect you to go through a bunch of different things in your life to try. You already have, and to gain something from each of them, and to forget what you want to forget, and to kind of take the positive and kind of figure it out. I mean, you're going to do lots of different things. So there's no pressure, and you never know. You're never too old to learn something new, to figure something out. Even like I gained this love of history and World War II and things like that in my older days. Like there's just so much to do. There's never a reason to be bored. There's so much interesting stuff out there to see and to do. I'm never bored, which is nice. You're never bored either.
No.
Yeah.
It's a
gift,
trait.
I think.
Yeah.
Pap was never bored. We always had something to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always finding a reason there's always a reason to live, always something to do while we're here.
And even when I'm not doing anything, it's by choice. I'm not bored because I want to be not doing anything.
Right.
It's intentional. Yeah.
I think one of the most entertaining things to do is just sit there with your thoughts and be like, wow, there's a lot going on in there.
For sure. Which makes, when Chris and I, it's an off topic, but, Chris and I went kayaking this year. And I'd forgotten, when I was younger, I used to do that. I'd forgotten how amazing it is just being out in the water on a kayak and just kind of floating and that silence around you. We need to do that. I go back to that a lot, and just that silence was so wonderful.
It's so rare to find silence nowadays.
Yeah, you always hear motors wherever you go.
It's crazy. Like, I was climbing at Rumney this summer, and we're up in the mountains, and there was a motorcycle show, like at the bottom of the mountain, one of the parking lots. Guys are doing donuts, and we're like on a cliff, and it's just
there's no escape.
Super loud. It's crazy.
Yeah, you got to go way back in the woods to get away.
And it's beautiful when you find that.
Yeah, and
it's so refreshing.
I'm so glad you've got that connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chris told me the other day, one of my friends, he was talking about how humans are always living above their noise level. And so that over time just causes like minor stress that just builds up and builds up and builds up. And it's the reason why when we hear silence, it's just so relieving. And I think it lets our thoughts just like explode.
For sure.
That's why at night, like, I don't know about you, but at night, like my brain just goes sometimes.
Yep.
And like on your walks, like if you let yourself just not have your earbuds in, you're gonna have all that, have all those thoughts.
For sure. I'm so excited for you to be out in like the West on your trip this summer and see the stars from like Utah.
Yeah.
You'll never be the same.
I can't wait. It's gonna be really
Yeah,
cool.
it's so amazing. Yep.
It puts so much in perspective too.
Yeah. Oh, it really does. It makes you feel tiny and insignificant, which I am happy to feel sometimes, you know? You know, it just doesn't take it, you can't take it too seriously.
Right.
Because we're just a blip.
That's all it
Do
is.
what you can with your blip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it will never, no matter what you do, it will never affect like that random star you're seeing.
Never.
But it can make a difference on the people around you.
For sure.
And I think that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you do. I mean, in this kind of crazy times, you just focus on your loved ones and your community around you and take care of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's
That was
it.
fun.
You have anything else?
I don't. It was fun. I really appreciate it.
Cool. I think we really got into a groove like near the end. I
do too.
I always like these because like you can see both of us getting more comfortable in the
Yeah, I
environment
mean, it's
as the
it's a
conversation goes.
process.
Yeah.
To kind of get into that group. I mean, we talk all the time, all day, but like this is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the same. I think both of our tones of voice changed during the podcast, which is really interesting.
Oh,
I've noticed.
I'm gonna have a horrible time watching myself.
You can just listen.
Okay.
So before we go, you can find my dad at Bunkt on Instagram, where he has tell him.
BUNKT _
Yeah. Interesting name.
Yeah,
See.
people have tried to ask me where it came from, and I never have a good answer. It's just one of those things that like came to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one of them.
Yeah.
He's had 30,000 followers in the past, but then all those bots.
The bots are leaving. I'm terrible at reels.
We're getting better though. That's the 2025 goal.
It really is.
Dad, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Jack.
Love you.
Love you too.
Everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Grateful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you could either share this episode with friends and family who you think would enjoy it, or leave a review down below on what I can do to make this better for you and for other listeners. All that would just help me be able to spread my message of gratitude and living a purposeful life. I hope you have a great day. See you soon.